Good afternoon. I'm Peter Bonfido, Director of the Art Galleries here at ACC. It's very exciting to host today's event, which is a partnership between TAG and ACC's Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation Center. I especially want to thank Dr. Williams for his ongoing collaboration and his enthusiasm for including arts programming into the annual National Day of Racial Healing events, which are part of an essential nationwide conversation. I would also like to thank the TAG events team, especially Olivia Spires, and TLED staff for helping us run this event. I'd also like to thank our interpreters. The format for today's program will be for each artist to give a short presentation about their work before opening up for a Q&A. Please think of questions you may have for the artists. If you are on Zoom, feel free to put them in the chat. So this event is about 3 years in the making. It started during the pandemic when Taylor Barnes and Luis Corpus, along with 5 other Texas-based artists, collaborated with the art galleries on a book project called The Necessity of Truth, a contribution to the National Day of Racial Healing. This ebook and companion video are currently available on TAG's website, and I'm very happy to announce that we are working on publishing hard copies of the book this semester. I encourage all of you to sign up for news, updates, and ways to support this project. And so here on the screen, if you go to this QR code or that website, you can sign up and you can hear about our progress on this project. Over the last few years, we've engaged in a number of projects with artists from the book through other exhibition projects and programs, and this talk today is part of an ongoing series of events. Both Taylor Barnes and Luis Corpus are highly skilled artists who create intellectually based work that stir emotions in us and give us perspectives to explore and reflect on. Their work is evolving and provides artists, students, and general viewers examples of how to address difficult themes with nuance, care, and purpose. So we are very happy to have time with them today. So I'm going to introduce Taylor, and then she's going to come up here and give her presentation. Taylor Barnes is a fiber artist and ceramicist based in Austin, Texas. Barnes's work consists of mixed media fibers and charcoal techniques that explore themes of spirituality, oral histories, power dynamics, and bell hooks philosophies of object and subject. In 2019, Barnes received an MFA in fibers from the University of North Texas, where she previously earned bachelor's degrees in ceramics and fibers. She has exhibited in solo and group exhibitions across the country and is a recipient of numerous awards and art-focused scholarships. Barnes is currently in residence at the Carver Museum as part of their Small Black Museum project. Please join me in welcoming Taylor.
Hello. Thank you all for being here today. I appreciate it. Again, my name is Taylor Barnes. I am exploring in my work a lot about spirituality, identity, and a lot of studying about oral histories with spirituality as well. So I wanted to just start off with kind of explaining my process and just kind of themes that you might find in the work, whether it be, just objects, whether it be non-representational work or it's figurative. So this slide here kind of just gives a brief kind of run through of what a normal day in my studio feels like, looks like. It's super messy. There's always just like some kind of project idea happening, a lot of just meditating, thinking, and just allowing the materials to really just speak to me. I always say whenever I introduce myself or introduce my practice that I am just a vessel for the work to come through. I am truly in tune with whatever I'm feeling, what needs to be said. And I luckily went to school for art, so the kind of like, know-how of doing something is there, but I really do allow intuitive thinking to take over my process, along with obviously the themes that you heard before. So going back to my work again, you're seeing all the processes, how dirty the work is, how dirty the studio is. But you'll notice that we end up with this like pristine piece, I guess. Dealing a lot with charcoal and free motion sewing. So with my fibers background, I'm always trying to figure out ways to manipulate materials. I.e., for me, the sewing machine is one. So instead of using like a traditional sewing machine where the line is straight, I have been trying to figure out new ways, if you're familiar with quilting, of just kind of manipulating that line and really being free with it. And again, intuitive. So as you'll see a lot with the kind of figurative work, that it's mainly women who I am bringing attention to. I am referencing a lot of women in my lineage or ancestral lineage who want to come forward and have something to say. So in this piece in blue was kind of in a theme of a body of work that I created of spiritual women coming from water as protection. Going to my kind of abstract, non-representational work, similar themes of oral history, but this is more of like an abstract approach to showing space, maybe where these figures exist, where they come from, and just kind of like the work that goes into the fabric, lots of material study as well. So you have charcoal here, and then there is a resist that I use, which is raffia, and I was just working the surface to just create the sense of space and depth that can come off of the canvas to allude to another space. So kind of tapping it again into the spiritual realm. Again, so I think kind of talking about what my work is drawn from, I think you can kind of have a sense of why some things might happen on the canvas, like the hands feeling, where are they coming from, where are they going, or where have they been, for In the Wake, which is referencing Christina Sharp's book, In the Wake. That's a great book. If you've never read it before, I highly recommend it. Also with In's Beginnings, I was trying to also kind of create this encaged kind of space with this figure existing in it. And this was In's Beginnings, so just kind of talking about like flowing from one state to another and being released and freed from this kind of entrapment. So just thinking about around the time that Peter reached out to me about this project, it was the pandemic, 2020. So I was thinking a lot about how we were just feeling confined, how, it was taking a toll on Black people specifically with racial injustices that were happening, and just kind of feeling it all, feeling a lot of pressure, and a lot of just sense of it's unexplainable. And I think you'll understand me by saying that. So this body of work was in tandem with a show that I also did for Cage Match Project. So if you're familiar with Austin, there's Canopy, and then there's the Cage Match right outside of there. So I had two shows going at the same time. So this is Pressure at Big Medium Gallery. So I reference all of that, the time, 2020, racial injustices, everything that was happening during that time, to bring you to a project that, again, in tandem with like the book. This was a sculpture that I created around the structures called a barracoon, which is where after the Middle Passage, slaves were held in barracoons until they were auctioned off and sold. So a really dark history that I was trying to kind of flip on its head, was still having that knowledge and understanding of history, but also how can we recontextualize it for us to have freedom in this time. So I'll have here a video that I'll try to have just playing. So this is the sculpture finished in Cage Match Project. which we'll get more into like the materials and everything later. But I created this video while I was making the sculpture, referencing barracoons, but I wanted it to feel like I loved how this structure was built on wheels, so it felt like I was just like able to escape something, and using something in history that was used to entrap us, to almost trick your mind into thinking that, you know, I'm trying to go somewhere, but I'm actually getting out of this space. So I just wanted to do a lot of play with just the location, playing with materials. When we get closer to photos of what these sculptures look like, you'll see that there's string wrapped around the branches and the forms that I created, which is just, again, about meditating on time. And also the pandemic was happening, and this was the very beginning when we just thought like breathing the air, we would get COVID. So not funny, but I laughed because it was intense, right? But yeah, so I just think that there is a lot going on with body. These sculptures are referencing like different heights, male, female, and child, that would have been sold not as a family. So again, just kind of like reinventing this history a bit to where it works in our benefit. So yeah, that's a little bit about this sculpture. Skip ahead. There we go. So here are some detailed images of what that barracoon looks like. A lot of netting processes with fibers happening here, a lot of like tying really tight areas, a lot of knotting. So it was a lot of almost building out this like web to create this sense of entrapment, but I mean, you could just go up to it and pull a piece of string and be freed from it. And this is what they look like in a gallery space, just to have a better feel of what the sculptures look like. So again, referencing height, using materials that are easily sourced, and with the color, I always work in black and white, black being my main color for all the obvious reasons. So this work, I also had the opportunity with Laguna Gloria through the Contemporary of Austin to basically present this at Laguna Gloria, and I decided to project it on that building. That's like the first thing that you see when you walk into the space. I felt like it wasn't necessarily like interrupting anything, but it absolutely had a presence. And I just felt like this was a beautiful way to express like this really heavy project, having the space to be free in space. So this was, I'm really happy this could transform and be molded in different ways, which I believe even my existence here is the same. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I have a lot of questions for you, but I am going to hold them until after. And if you have questions too, please think of them, and we will get to ask Taylor and step away from. Is that better? Taylor and Luis. So I'm going to introduce Luis. Luis Corpus is a visual artist and educator based in McAllen, Texas. Corpus received both his BFA and MFA in studio art from Texas A&M University Corpus Christi. He has worked as an educator and art instructor at South Texas College since 2011. Corpus's work has been exhibited across the country and has been collected by Kane Memorial Library, Del Mar College, and the President's Council Collection, Texas A&M University Corpus Christi. Through his work, he pushes back against damaging stereotypes and harmful perceptions of Mexican Americans, notably in his ongoing series, Oxygen, Hydrogen, Carbon. Please welcome Luis.
Is there any way we can do this one on presenter mode, by any chance? You know, it's okay. I had notes. I am going to wing it. Good afternoon, everybody. So this is the type of things that I've been doing since, this one's from 2010. What I aim to do through my artwork is I don't really, it's the talk is a National Day of Racial Healing. I don't really aim to push any type of communication method that's going to make people feel uncomfortable. I don't really want to create an environment through any artwork that I make that's going to push people further apart. I think to the contrary. I think through my artwork, I think building connections, I think that's very important. And the connections that I build, it's really just emanating from experience, emotion. And I think artwork should do that. It should emanate from the person's core. But because it has the lens of my own cultural experience, you can see that some of those ideas that we share, the common human experience, manifest themselves within the work. So this image here, it's titled Baby's First Mugshot. And the reason for it is I went over to my dad's house with my kid, my baby, and my baby was, just being very fussy that day. And my dad said I should put a piece of red string on his forehead. I guess the red string, it's a wives' tale. It's like a Mexican, like folk wives' tale to cure colic or hiccups. And so I took the red string as a cue of protection, because I think the commonality, speaking of the commonality of the human experience, what parent does not want to protect their children? This image here, this is the title is "Must I Wear a Tie to Be Civilized?" This is a digital image. It's right around the pandemic as well. You got to work with what you have access to. And at that time, working digitally, I think was very available. So this is a digital image, and the person portrayed is Ruben Salazar. Ruben Salazar, he was a journalist in California, predominantly the LA area. He was very well-to-do, and he was well-respected within the Mexican-American community, because he was the one that was starting to shift the dynamic. When the news organizations are just showing everything negative about those communities, he stepped in and he said, you know what, this is the real community of East LA. Salazar ended up becoming one of the martyrs of the Chicano civil rights movements by taking, it was mysterious death. The facts aren't all there. He took a canister to the head from the sheriff's department. At least that's the official story. But instantly he became a martyr. And so he became a cultural icon within the community because, what he stood for. So the title, Must I Wear a Tie to Be Civilized? Because he was always dressing to the T, blazer, tie. And I thought, somebody that came in during the time that he was working as a professional, embedding himself in a place where not a lot of people like him are working. I think often, I imagine, because of the cultural climate of the time, people would see that he's well-dressed. People would see the tie. He's speaking the way he should be speaking. But some people must have focused entirely on the skin color, which is why his skin color is so dark in the image. And I also made this, considering he's the martyr, I also made this halo around his head. But playing with the idea of that duality, the professional and then the Mexican. The halo also is representative of a sombrero. Sometimes that's all people see. This is an image that I made more recently. This is an oil painting. I know we have some oil painting students here. We have some painting students. This is an image that two self-portraits that I made recently. Frequently, what I try to do is I try to explore that sense of duality. Like, I'm American. I'm very proud to be an American, but I also have a very strong Mexican heritage. My family came here in the 1980s, and so did a lot of my uncles and my aunts. And when we get together, sometimes we like to drink a couple of beers. And when my cousin Chacho has a couple of beers, he always asks for us to play the 80s tracks. And so what he goes around saying is, hey, puro pinches 80s. And so I think the title itself is a great way to pay homage and respect to the duality in the culture. Puro pinches 80s. The one on the left, actually, it exhibited in a gallery, University of Anchorage, Alaska. It received Juror's Choice. And then the one on the right, as soon as I get back home, I'm going to pack it and ship it to Seattle, Gallery 110. The reason I'm sharing this with you, because I just find it so interesting that here I am. I don't even know if they know what puro pinches 80 means. Puro pinches 80s means pure fucking 80s. That's what it means. I just find humor in that. Sometimes I don't mask what I want to say. If you ever see me making something like this, it's because I read something and I'm just like, I just need to get it out. I don't really consider it like my high art or fine art or however you want to define it, but I make stuff like this. Most often, I will obscure the message. Like in this painting, you can see on the left, you can see in spray paint written La Causa. La Causa is an ideal from late 60s, early 70s, just promoting, seeking to remedy the injustices faced by the Mexican-American community. But you can also see through the process of painting that I've obscured the letters, because for me, communicating outright is not important. I don't think that really trying to hit people over the head with a message is effective. I think if you try to create a sense of, again, going back to the human experience, like how are we related to each other? How do my experiences connect with yours? And so often I'll start off with some type of idea that's based on like today's talk on racism or inequality, things that I've faced, things that concern our communities, but I'll obscure them and I'll scale them back because it's not as important to me to really be outright with them. So this is the series that I really did want to talk to you about. I think it encapsulates all those ideas about culture and human experience the best, at least for my work. It has three influences. The first being at the far left, it's a drawing by the artist David Hammonds. Hammonds was using detritus from the streets of Harlem to communicate the idea of the futile attempt of black urban youth at becoming the next LeBron or the next Kobe. The way Hammond saw it, he grew up through the civil rights movement. The way he saw it is like, these kids should be going to college and trying to become professionals. I think that's a little bit of a hypocrite for an artist to be pushing that idea, but I like the idea of the material, detritus, dirt from the streets of Harlem, to communicate an idea about people from Harlem. The image in the center, it is by Vic Muniz from his series Sugar Children. And what Muniz noticed is when in the Caribbean, he noticed that the kids were very happy. I think like all kids, right? All kids like very happy, joyous, full of energy. But the adults were miserable. And they were miserable because they spent an incredible amount of time working sugar fields. And so the thing that was supposed to bring them most joy, which was the sugar, was doing the opposite, making their lives miserable. So the material, again, I think the importance of the material. The third influence was an unnamed politician. Back in around 2015, I'm hearing on the news, on the TV, which was crazy to me, discussions on immigration, Mexicans, that they're not sending their best people. They're not sending you and I. They're sending the criminals, the rapists, the drug dealers. Some of them may be good, okay, but for the most part, it's the rapists, the criminals, the drug dealers. And the crazy thing is, I'm sitting here and I'm hearing this and I'm watching this, and right next to me is my kid. So how am I supposed to tell him that grandma and grandpa came to this country undocumented and have worked hard their entire life, that is the reality. I think the reason that I work within ideas of race, I think it's a personal expression, but I think it's also important that we take charge of our own narrative and work against. I mean, I don't have millions of dollars to push my own ideas, but I can try to do whatever I can within the scope of my reach. So I thought about the materiality of Hammonds and Muniz, and I wondered what material would best represent our communities. Sure, maybe the taco, the sombrero, the corn in the cup, but what I ended up doing was I went down to the, let's see, there's 2 mice up here. I got it. There's 2 mice. I grabbed this one. Thank you, though. So this is I went down to the Rio Grande. This is the Rio Bravo, aka the Rio Grande. This is being filmed from the US side. Across is the Mexican side. And then I went down to the river. Terrible audio because I should have invested in a GoPro. That's underneath the bridge in between Roma and Camargo, and I collected water. Speaking of the materiality, I thought the river was an excellent material to utilize because the river exists between 2 countries. It is at once American and at once Mexican. Even in the name, the Rio Bravo, the Rio Grande. And growing up, I mean, I was either Luis or Luis. I love the image of the birds. I also collected branches from trees that I knew had roots in the riverbank and wrapped them in foil. You cook them for about half an hour, 45 minutes, and you make your own charcoal. You could try this next time you're making barbecue, because I know as Texans, we like our barbecue. And I began to draw. The material representing people that shared in my duality. I really was trying to express how I felt, and I began drawing people that shared a similar life experience. Some of the people were born here, some born in Mexico, some here legally, some here undocumented. I took the water from the river, used the charcoal from the river to make the images, took the water from the river to saturate the paper. And for myself, that completed the process. It was important, I think, to incorporate the river itself, not just the charcoal. Here's some more images from that series. Some people from here, some people from over there, but the connectivity was that they were amazing individuals, every single one of them. And when you look at the images, you can't tell who's from here and who's over there. What I would hope is that we see a sense of humanity in the images. I hope we see a little bit of ourselves in them. Let's see. Here's the latest drawings from that series. And then here is kind of the evolution of like what I'm trying to do. I'm still taking that charcoal, but now I'm trying to incorporate carbon printing. So it's no longer just the drawing on paper, but on some type of clear substrate, glass, so that I can incorporate the element of light into the images, and so that the water can physically ebb and flow in real time. So I'm still trying to figure out, here's an example of one of my failures. I've been trying this for a while, and I've been failing miserably. But that's an example of one of the images, the carbon print. I will get it. I think about the material itself, the water and the charcoal. those two elements, the carbon, the hydrogen, the oxygen, they make up more than 90% of our bodies. And I think, from the perspective of the universe, like, let me go there. The universe doesn't care whether it's inanimate and we're alive. And you look at, the vastness of space. We have yet to find life on any other planet. And what I mean to say is we're all we have. And I think for no other reason than that, I think we should just be a little bit nicer to each other. Yes. So in closing, I did just want to end with a thank you for those of you that actually took the time. Nobody stood up and say, hey, don't talk about my favorite politician like that. I appreciate you listening to me. And I appreciate those of you at Austin Community College. I know Peter, Olivia, I've been in constant contact with you guys. Mr. Bernardo Diaz, Department Chair for ACC, hosting an event like this. And a gentleman, I forget his name in the back, but I know he was instrumental in this as well. Gentleman right there. What was it? Kyrie, Mr. Kyrie, I know he was instrumental in bringing this together. It is so important that I think we take some time to, talk about these items. And, we have a long way to go. There's a long history. I didn't really care to go into the history and all the injustices that have occurred. These are things that are generational. None of you are going around and trying to take anything from me. It's not you. It's just generational. So the more we talk about these types of things, I hope the more we just come to like some type of connection. But thank you very much.
Great. Thank you both so much. That was really very nice. Great way to present your work to new audiences, I think, and also give us an opportunity now to ask these artists some questions. So if you have a question, please raise your hand and wait for the microphone. Olivia will be around. We definitely want you to talk into the mic because then it's also on Zoom, so on Zoom won't be able to hear your question. And then we'll also get some questions from the chat. So before I open it out, just one thing. Every time I do an event like this, really wonderful to be an audience member and get to look at the images again while you are talking about them. And one of the things that really struck me with your works is that, Taylor, I'll start with Luis. Your works, especially when it's a subject, when it's a figurative work, your figure is front, center, just the focus. Taylor, yours are not always like that. A lot of times you have, the hands image is amazing, and even in the Cage Match project, you're coming at it from maybe a different angle. And so that's not really a question to either of you, but if you want to kind of talk about that a little bit like that, Luis, why do you want that kind of perspective of the subject, and why do you want it?
Let me go first. So I think art is like music. There should be a variety. I don't think the way I do it is the right way. I think it's just a way. And for me, drawing and art making began when I was 7 years old, drawing pumpkins. And I was just fascinated by the illusion of space on flat surfaces. And so I went with the technical aspect. It wasn't until, I was all about technique, and it wasn't until I hit college. I'm also a product of the community college system at Del Mar College. That's where I started. And that's where I started learning about possibilities in art and the importance of artistic intent. And for myself, I was always drawn towards portraiture, and I always wondered about the people in the image and I think it's a coupling of the, my technical. It's where I bring my artwork, and then and the question of people. I think that's why I continually work figuratively.
I'm cool with sharing because that was crazy.
Okay.
I think Yeah, I think what Luis is saying is great. I think intent is really important. I don't believe, for at least the way that I approach figure, it's not necessarily like, it's not necessary all the time for the figures to be staring at you. I think that has a lot to do with also permission. I think that's kind of a dynamic I like to play with my figurative work, is when whoever approaches it, they have to position themselves to the work. So if she doesn't want to look at you, you don't deserve to get looked at. And I think that's giving a lot of power back to the figures in my work. And if I think of the figures in my work, they are ancestors in my lineage. So I'm allowing them to have the power of what they want to do on the work, on the surface. I think when it comes to the abstract, or like the sculptures that I'm working around, I'm referencing body. So, and also still that power that holds on the sculpture. Are you able to really approach it, or are you just a viewer? So especially when it's talking about like, this is now my escape route to get out of here. Essentially, I'm using a barracoon as something that was used to entrap me, and now I'm using it as a method to escape. So that's my approach with figure. If they're looking at you, or if you're having a conversation with them, it's really up to what they want.
Thank you, Taylor, and thank you, Luis, for your awesome presentations. My question is about ambiguity in the work. Luis, you very purposely mentioned that you obscure some of the words and the language in some of your compositions. And Taylor, just looking at the figurative work, there is ambiguity in terms of the definitive identities of these figures. Can you speak a bit about the role of ambiguity in your work?
I love that word, ambiguity. That's my favorite thing. I like the fact that working with charcoal, it's ephemeral, so it can change and be anything you want it to be. And I believe, again, giving reverence and power back to my lineage, my ancestors, or whoever guides me, being able to be ambiguous, being able to be whatever they want to be, whether it be a mountain, or it be a sculpture, or it be them as a figure. I think that it's malleable enough to do that. Also, going into working with fabric, you can fold it, you can mold it to something else, and same with the sewing. So I love that that they are able to exist however they want to.
Yeah, for myself, ambiguity is just leaving something for the viewer. I think when you look at an image, or like when you watch a movie and you're done with a movie, it just takes you a long time to really come back to it. But I think if there's always something interesting that piques your interest, I think you may come back to it a little bit more. So not putting everything at face value is important, because I have a method I'd like to communicate, or some idea I'd like to communicate, but I think the viewer also should be able to come to their own conclusions.
The audience? Do we have any? Oh, yeah. Oh, no, hold on, Constance. We'll get you in a second.
Thank you very much for the talks. So both of my questions are about material and charcoal, specifically, that you both used. To Taylor, I was wondering, using charcoal on cloth, what was your experience with that surface as opposed to paper or other surfaces, like especially in the malleability that you were talking about? Was there anything different that you experienced with that? And to Luis, making the charcoal the way you did, other than like the associations that you made in terms of the actual technical use of charcoal, did you experiment with that side of it? Did you feel any different from any other charcoal that you have used? Have you done this in other ways to make your charcoal using different methods or not? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your question. I love talking about materials. I think Will you repeat yours one more time so I answer it correctly?
Yeah, so your experience with charcoal on cloth as opposed to other surfaces, was there anything different about that experience?
Okay, gotcha. I think for me, it was just kind of an easy step since I am already a fibers major. I think that working with cloth was just kind of like the answer for me. Um, I'm not a draw. I don't consider myself a drawing and painting person, which I know it's like gasp. What? How does she not? But I didn't start this way. I started as a ceramicist, and then I saw a mark on the ground, and my buddy was like, "You should play with charcoal," and then I did. So it really was just kind of I'm being very honest when I say that these figures showed up on me. I had no intentions of starting to make figurative work or drawing this way. I've always been someone that's a material person, and I try to push the material or medium as far as I can. So, yeah, I mean, before these figures started showing up, it was me using charcoal as another line with my sewing, or charcoal on the surface of clay to see what that did. So yeah, I was just, fabric was just there, and that's what I used. Yeah.
Uh, it's an excellent question that you asked. It was miserable, like drawing with that stuff. Because if you go down to Hobby Lobby, you go down to Michael's, Blick, and you pick up charcoal, store-bought charcoal, you're either getting vine, willow, or some type of compressed. Different varieties, variations. The manufacturers tend to refine that charcoal, and so they apply very smoothly. When you're making your own charcoal and you're somebody like me who, I don't know what the names of the trees are, I'm just grabbing, and you notice that each different branch has like different qualities. Each tree has its own quality. So it's all about experimentation, I think, at that point. There's no binder, which makes it incredibly difficult as well. So it's learning how to work with the materials that you have. You have to learn it before you can, at least that was my experience.
Wasn't, I hated making my own charcoal because you couldn't yield the same result. Like it was just like, oh, it's not the same. Why is it brown?
I'm going to go to a question from Melissa from Zoom, and this is kind of a follow-up in some ways for Luis. He says, I didn't realize these drawings with charcoal and river water were so large. Could you elaborate on your reasoning for creating large-scale works for this series?
I think that's for myself, the reason for going large with the drawings is because I think you just, scale-wise, when you have an image that's larger than your physical self, just requires you to be more intimate with it. And if the idea was to create that human connection, I think that's where they just started getting a little larger.
I think we had a couple other questions here. Constance, do you have one?
Looking at the ambiguity in both of your works, I see that as a plus because, like not all Hispanic people necessarily have brown skin. There's blonde hair, blue-eyed people from Mexico. And I think that the ambiguity is a plus. And also for Taylor's work, it's like the diversity of using the black and not being able to see the shape of the nose or the mouth necessarily. It just shows the diversity of African people as they came to this country and, were abused, or how the racial blending occurred so that, it's more open. And so I see that as a plus, the ambiguity.
Thank you.
I don't have a, no,
I-
no.
Hmm. I totally agree. Like on my mom's side, there's like my grandfather on my mom's side, very light skin, like he's he's white. Yeah, he's white. One of the baddest Mexicans on the planet right now is a light skinned redhead, Canelo Alvarez. There's so much diversity within the Mexican community, and a lot of it has just to do with its history. Um, we're like this giant melting pot. So I totally agree.
Here's a question right here.
Hi, this is specifically for Taylor. You mentioned at the beginning of your presentation how when you work, you typically kind of go into a meditative state, like the work comes to you and flows through you. And I just wanted to ask, like, around like how long, when in your practice do you think like that started to occur? When do you think you were able to sort of like release ego and perfectionism and just like kind of let the art flow through you? And what do you think you did to like enable that to happen?
That was a beautiful question. Thank you. I think it's ongoing. I don't have that figured out. Not to bum you out, because that's not. I think it's more of a, when the moment's about to, when it's happening. I'll say that. I think I started getting more connected to the moment is happening when I'm not thinking. And that's what happens with meditation, right? Like you're sitting, you're releasing your mind of thoughts, you're quiet. And I think whenever I'm just working and I'm not thinking anymore is when I can start recognizing that. Releasing ego happened probably my first year of grad school, when I was introduced to bell hooks. And that's why I pay reverence to her in my artist statement. That's the whole reason I lowercase my name. It's because it's not me. And that is a constant reminder of that for me. So I think to be able to begin the journey of like finding those moments is just when you're simply just there enjoying it. I think that's what you can start kind of thinking about. Like, I just love painting with red right now. Like, this is just my jam. I really like this. And whenever that kind of feeling is just happening, just listen to it. Like how your body's responding to that. Are you loosening your jaw? Like, are your shoulders dropping? Like, what is that feeling? And you'll be able to tap into it. But just give yourself time. I am constantly trying to be like, I need to make this. And that is the worst space to be in. So just allow it to happen.
Other questions? Okay. Well, while Maddie's bringing that one up, not to interject ego too much, but I mean, what do you think about your place in contemporary art, and kind of what does institutional representation mean to you, and do you see things changing, honestly, like in real time, from even just a few years ago?
You start.
I really try to hand the mic off. How do I see myself in
Like within contemporary art right now?
I won't go to as far as say I don't, but I don't hear a lot of how I approach art. So I hope to add to that conversation when we're tapping into like the spiritual realm. I think there's a lot of research around it, but again, like the flow state, what is that? Institutional representation. I've definitely gone through that, did it, experienced it, realized it wasn't for me. And I think that's a lot of trust in yourself and in your work. So to that I say, it's wonderful if you have it, but truly know if it's what you want to be a part of. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a deep question. Thank you. I don't really know how to properly navigate or answer that one. I don't worry myself about it. I'm not trying to become like the next fixture in any art history textbook. I think I need to just make what I want to make right now, what I think is pure, what is sincere, and just let the rest of it take care of itself.
So this is also from Zoom for Taylor. Very interested in your use of raffia! Exclamation point. Thinking of associations made with masquerades and performativity in general. I'm interested in the contrast between those traditional uses of raffia and the quiet and stillness of your work. Could you talk more about your interest in raffia as a material?
Yeah, that was a really good question. I'm gonna keep it short because I could talk for a long time about that. I think when it comes to, I know what you're talking about with the performative aspect of raffia, and yes, that's a great connector. A lot of my work, when I'm talking about oral history and spirituality, I am tapped into Yoruba as a practice, and that is a part of West African culture, having those garments, wearing raffia, adornments. I think a really quick connector there is with Simone Leigh and her sculptures, where she's using raffia like after the head piece, and it kind of like drops down. I love the material. I love how strong it is and how it can become a basket. It can be a surface. You can clean with it. There's just all these kinds of approaches to the material. I loved the organic aspect of it, to where it kind of like it gets thicker in areas, thinner in other areas, and it's a natural material. So I wanted to showcase the raffia in the same way as like it's performative, it's showing action, it has movement, and just kind of like almost stopping it in time with the piece that you saw earlier that I used it in. So yeah, raffia comes in a lot with my ceramics work, which is coming soon.
Yes, I'm going to ask kind of a follow-up question a little bit about, because I've talked to both of you about craft a little bit, maybe that it's not really tension, but just the idea of craft traditions versus fine art training, which you both specialized techniques, but at the same time, I think you're also thinking about more traditional ways of mark making through your work. Something to address.
Yeah, I think with my degrees with ceramics and with fibers, those are both technically craft mediums. I think that it's limiting to only call it a craft because there are so many people that have worked their entire lives to make the perfect bowl, their entire lives to create the perfect basket, and these things are also coming along with lineage and traditional practices. So I think there's a beautiful history with craft. I think it's limiting to craft makers if they believe that's all they can do with it. But yeah, I believe craft is fine art.
I happen to draw, I happen to paint, I happen to make digital works. I don't think my approach, again, I don't think my approach is the only approach. I think you look back at art history, look at Marcel Duchamp fountain, right? As long as it's the idea. Look at Mauricio Catalan, comedian, reinforcing what Marcel, everybody was like all enamored by Catalan. It was like, Marcel Duchamp already did it. Anything is art so long as the artist says it is. So if we call it craft, like whatever, however we define it, so long as the artist is utilizing it to create their own vision, I think therein lies the purpose of art.
Any other questions from the audience? Okay, well then please join me in thanking our artists for this really stimulating talk. I really appreciate it.
Did it.
Did it.
we'll have a small reception outside. So the Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation Center has brought us some refreshments. So if you're here, please join us outside the presentation hall. Thank you very much.